Namaskar. Hello and welcome to P Guru's channel. I'm your host Sri Iyer. Atmanirbharta, self-sufficiency, how to get there. General Ravi Shankar has put together an excellent slideshow, and we're going to actually talk through that and discuss various options available in front of India, how to get to various destinations, and more importantly, what are these objectives. So we take a very systematic step-by-step approach. I'm very honored to have Lieutenant General Ravi Shankar. And General Ravi Shankar, namaskaram and welcome to P Guru's channel again.
Namaskaram. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak on Atmanirbharta and the conjunct to that is strategic independence, which has been spoken of late. While I really thank you for this opportunity, I must mention this is not a defense subject. Defense is part of this subject first. So I'm not going to talk about my strategic experience rather than expand the dialogue to a broader avenue.
I think this discussion hasn't come a moment too soon, because if you look at all the gyrations that's happening right now, somebody is meeting with somebody collectively, sometimes one-on-one, people call it 2+2, sometimes it's 1+1, and lots of deals are getting signed. What is the meaning? All that stuff, is one side. But what is it that we have in our kitchen? What is it that we can do with that? That's what we're going to talk about today. General Ravi Shankar, if you would like to please start sharing your slide presentation, we can take it from there.
Yeah, I will. Thank you. So this is the thing we're going to talk about today, the concept of strategic independence and Atmanirbharta. This is something which I started thinking of last year, when the virus broke out, the pandemic was raging, and the Chinese were knocking at the doors of Eastern Ladakh. Our Prime Minister spoke of Atmanirbharta, and this word of strategic independence kept coming up. Then I gave it a thought and I wrote an article on it. And then I said, okay, let me talk of it to people. This is beyond defense. This is beyond this thing. This is all about India and the future of where India should go. Right? So you see, that how eventful.
Yes, it was. It's one of the perhaps most significant years of at least my life, and I'm sure, unless you went through a war, I think these were very significant. 2020 was a very significant year.
Yeah, we had the virus, we had the clash with China. Our economy fell off the cliff, but then we are pulling it back. Though we went through emergency arms imports. Experienced armed forces pulled things back. We've had a tremendous diplomatic outreach, and our economy has started rebounding. Moody's has said, and everyone has said that we are going to be the fastest growing economy. Now we need to be an Atmanirbhar Bharat to achieve strategic independence and emerge as a power. That's the opportunity in front of us. I mean, to put things in this thing, you remember we got political independence in 47, and when we did the Green Revolution and went through Operation Flood, we got food security went away, and we got independence from famine and hunger. The liberalization and reforms of the 90s gave us economic independence. Globalization, gave us partial technological independence and atomic energy, space, and missiles. There's a time when things stick, but the concept of strategic independence has evaded us till date. Look at it. We could never take independent actions.
Sir, I'd like just to, sorry, I just would like to stop you there just for a second. So this is something that people don't understand. Everybody looks at what they have in front of them and then say, why did India not do this? Especially putting the frame back to like 1971, 1975, whatever you have. So perhaps you can give a little bit of a peek into what are these things. I mean, that first slide. Go to the next slide, sir.
Yeah. See, when we
never take independent actions.
Yeah. For example, when your parliament was attacked, you couldn't go and attack Pakistan or sort out Pakistan.
And why
very
was
simple.
That?
Well, we were not strong enough economically. We didn't have the kind of wherewithal in defense. We didn't have so many things. You're looking right, or for that matter, when Mumbai happened, we were still not strong enough as a power. You could never agree or disagree with other powers. They would tell you what to do, right? You couldn't set your own rules. You had to bow down to others' rules. Right? You could have been Atmanirbhar long back, but you could never do that, right? Because everyone was interfering with your rules. You could never use military force autonomously. That's what I told you. There were so many times in our history when we had to go and we could have sorted out Pakistan, but we couldn't after 71, right? And in fact, if you go back even in 77, 71, the consequences of going into Pakistan, and creating Bangladesh were very severe on us. Our economy was in doldrums. We were very badly off. And this, of course, the next thing, which I read in Washington Post on a op-ed on strategic independence, they said that you can be spoken of, but not spoken at or spoken for, right? If you didn't have strategic independence, you could be the object of a discussion, but not its subject. That means everything is directed at you. You are being told what to do, right?
General Ravi Shankar, I'm reminded of a statement by one of my
Yeah,
good friends who's now a US congressman. He said that the Jews have a saying. This is pertaining to American politics. They said, if you are not at the table, you're on the menu.
correct.
Please go ahead, sir.
I'll put it another way. You're not if you're not neither on both, you're serving the table. If you're not on the menu, you're not on the table, you're serving them, right? And that's why we lack strategic independence to do what was necessary for the nation. We did a lot. I'm not saying no to that, but I'm talking of strategic independence. It's the difference between, like you said, being on the table or on the menu. What is strategic independence dependent on? Look at it. It's very simple. First and foremost, we have to understand it's dependent on a whole lot of internal and external factors. But it doesn't mean that you have to be fully self-sufficient. That's what is in blue. You can be interdependent. You could be strong in one thing and weak in another, and match it with others. But it means that you have to be strong in core and fundamental issues. On that, there is no compromise. You should have the ability to trade and barter and negotiate on your terms and not someone else's terms. See, when we opened up to WTO, we opened up at a time when we were not strong in fundamental and core issues. That's why we have adverse trade balances with China the way they are, and you're stuck. You should have the ability to stand on your own feet and not depend on others, especially when it comes to the territorial integrity and sovereignty of the nation. Right? This is important. The last one, when you say strength, you need to have the internal and external strength. Mark you, internal and external strength to live in adversarial environment of a toxic Pakistan and a predatory China. I've always called Pakistan as a toxic nation and China as a predatory nation. Anyone who touches Pakistan gets poisoned. Anyone who goes towards China will get his hand bitten. That's the way I look at it. And it's happening.
Now, sir, question for you.
Yeah.
Does India understand what its core strengths are? And I'm not talking about being a human resources provider. That's only one part of the whole story. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there is a deep realization about this. After all, we've gone through 70 years of independence. And like I said, we've gone through a lot of independences, step by step. Yeah? There was a time when we were living from ship to mouth, based on PL 480 wheat that was coming on. Today, you're a food exporter. You are the biggest producer of milk. All this has happened. And one. Number two, the core values and your fundamental strengths have changed with time. As time has changed, these fundamental values have changed. And the necessities have changed. Today, you've reached a stage where your necessities are different. Earlier, it was a matter of survival. Today, you want to become a power. Like you said, you want to move from the menu to the table. Right? So your requirements are different. That is what today's strategic independence is all about. Right? Shall we move?
Yes, please.
Okay. Then the question comes, is India a weak nation? Definitely not. Is India a strong nation? Yes. In many ways, it is one of the strongest nations. But in some nations, it is not. In some crucial issues, it is not. In fact, just today I read an article before we got together. It was an article in a magazine called War on the Rocks, where someone has said, he says, look, USA has to make choices when it's dealing with China. And it has to make, and its mandatory choice is India, which is an equal Asian giant, which can hold China. That's how strong you are. And he's not talking of any other nation. He says, unless India and USA get together, you can't handle China. This is the US view.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, sir, if you remember the first week of Biden presidency, there was a lot of huffing and puffing, like saying that India will be looked at very closely, microscopically. We're going to review the Quad engagement. Everybody's talked about, oh, the US is going to join TPP, it's going to join this, it's going to do that. Essentially, somehow giving the appearance that they were going to move away from India. Yet, when Biden got briefed by the ground situation, what was happening along the LAC, the whole thing took a 360, not 180 degree turn.
And I have no doubt in my mind about this issue. Yeah, we need to build on our strengths so that no part of it is marginalized.
Yes.
Yeah. And we will be strategically independent when that happens. The no gets, the NO becomes just N. And of course, my view, from here, I'm going to come to my view and my perception of the whole thing. We need to focus on certain areas and not attempt too much. Because if you attempt too much, you'll fall flat.
I must mention one little thing about the famous playback singer, S.P. Balasubramaniam. He said the secret of his success was, I know what I don't know.
Correct. And I should do what I know.
Yes. And I think what you said, absolutely very, very on the spot, on point, sir. Please continue.
Yeah. So, first thing which we should know is our population. It's going to go take over China somewhere in about 10 years and will be far ahead of China as China declines, right? Now, when you have so much of population, they're all working age population. You see on the right, what you see, this little Eiffel Tower, there's a bulges in the bottom, young nation. So they need a lot of jobs. So education and skilling will be a very important aspect of your outlook tomorrow. And of course, migration and brain drain will continue, that you'll have to deal with it. So this is one factor which we have to take care of. Our population has to be kept busy and skilled and with jobs. The second thing, I've chosen 5 points. This is my 5-point framework. We can discuss this as we go along.
Yeah.
You can ask me questions. We are looking at health, water, energy, defense, and data, or digitalization, right? The logical question is, why these? Because these are the issues where we have tremendous strengths. You look at it. As an Indian, we have tremendous strengths in these 5 things. But it is in these areas we have equally phenomenal weaknesses. We'll talk of water. 54% of India faces high to extremely high stress of water, right? And out of the 17 most water stressed nations, which is in the left, India is 13th, which is significant. Now, large swathes of India face water stress. Major cities, like the one in Chennai, we are in absolute water scarce situation, where you don't get 800 cubic meters per capita. We suffer extensively from waterborne diseases, groundwater contamination, water pollution. And as per most estimates internationally, a major water crisis is looming ahead of us. And if you need manufacture to relocate to India, and you want industrialization and growth continues, we need water. And you need water for agriculture also. This is a critical thing. That's why I put it first in the order of, pecking order. Okay. But like I said, we have tremendous amount of water. We have enough water in Himalayas. We have tremendous monsoons, but our management is poor. We need more storage capacities, both over the ground and under the ground.
When you
Right?
say under the ground, are you meaning like aquifers?
Yeah. We have tremendous aquifers. They're drying down. You have to recharge. You have to, use. You have to reopen those aquifers. Right? So we need to store water. You can't just store water on ground, over ground. Anyone who's, I'm not expert on this, but whatever I've read and whatever I've known, you need to put a lot of water underground and hold it there, right? We have drained our underground water resources. You look at the storage capacities. India has about 120 to 220 days capacity storage.
Which
US has
explains
900.
why every year, you are looking at
We
the
are
next
struggling.
year's monsoon.
Monsoon.
Monsoon has to not fail every year.
Yeah. US has 900 days. That means 3 years virtually did not have water. It's got 3 years reserve of water. South Africa has got 500 days. China is bad, 250. That's a different thing. Pakistan has only 30 days, right? But 120 to 220 is tight. Now, like I said, addressing water problem has huge payoff in employment, agriculture, health, and in fact, in every aspect of our life, right? I don't think there's two thoughts or two views about this. We need to go on a multi-mission mode.
General Ravi Shankar, if I could indulge you to go back 3 slides to look at the map of India, where I'm surprised to see Punjab showing as extremely high. That
because
is a
of
surprise.
that's because of the groundwater, exploitation. The way we have exploited water and groundwater exploitation in Punjab, the water levels have been going down regularly, despite all this. Okay, so that's a problem. That's why I said, look, this is a poor management. We have to do these two are the crux, right?
And viewers, you'll notice that in that map of India, wherever there is reasonable forestation, you will see that the water is not a crisis. Now you understand why forests are so important. Yeah, please continue, sir.
Right. So we have to go on a multi-mission mode. We have to do river water linking, river and water body cleaning. We've been doing this Ganges cleaning for so long and never gets done. You need to do conservation, regeneration schemes of floodplains, lakes, groundwater recharge area, rainwater harvesting. You need to have focus on efficient and sustained irrigation. And then, of course, you need to take great pollution and contamination prevention measures. Some people have done it. It's not as if we have not done it. Let me be this thing. One of our greatest successes is the Indira Gandhi Canal, where you've taken water from, the Satluj and brought it down all the way to Barmer. In Barmer, people used to go 10 to 20 kilometers just to get a pot of water. Today, water is available in every household in Barmer. And if you go from the south, the Narmada basin has got water right up to here. It's just south of this is Gujarat. So this entire belt, we have done this. It's not as if we have not done it. These are the pictures of the Indira Gandhi Canal. You just see the green belt astride the canal in this picture on the right bottom corner. Okay, but you need to do more. We have an interbasin water transfer link system. How much we have done it is a question mark. And can we do it ahead is a huge political problem. It's not a practical problem. It's a political problem. Unless our politics comes on board, we can't do all this. We've done the planning, but we have to execute it. Right. So this is where,
if I could indulge you to again just stop on this screen, because it's got a lot of information here. Especially the water transfer links that you are proposing. And
I'm not proposing. This is a plan of the Indian government.
Indian government. I'm sorry.
It's just that they have to execute it.
I think the Pennar and Palar, those things I think were attempted, because at the time of N.T. Ramarao 30 years ago, they were trying to do that. But Pennar itself is not a perennial river.
No,
it has to get that from Krishna.
let me put it this way: the Krishna to Chennai, Madras, right,
Mm.
was a plan of British days. The Buckingham Canal.
Mm.
The Buckingham Canal is there still in India. I mean Chennai,
Right.
and this was to transfer water from Vijayawada to here. Then
Mm.
only from 70 years we have not been able to. And of course, N.T. Ramarao and MGR tried to revive it, but somehow it failed.
Right.
And of course, there are like without getting into the micro issues, but we have to put something somewhere,
Right.
right? That's the point. Okay.
Yeah. Please continue, sir.
Yeah. So now let's talk of energy. You want to make in India, you want to do Atma Bharat, Atmanirbhar Bharat, you want to locate industries from China, right? And if your economy, which is going to go fivefold, you need energy. 1.6 billion people, you need more energy. In fact, the estimate is that you need twice the energy of today. So, unless you have, this is the second point after health, after water, we are looking at energy. Unless you have energy, you will not have strategic independence, right? Okay. Now you look at the electricity demand. I put it here for up to 2040 for various agriculture. This is all there, right? This is the demand. And of course, you have an unmet demand. We are not that badly off, but our demand is going to go up geometrically as your economy expands and your population expands. That's the point, right? Now, this is the power generation by source. What are you going to have for the
Coal
next 40 years?
continues to. I was going to ask you, but you
Yeah.
already put up the thing.
Yeah.
Coal is
You
the
got-
main engine.
You're going to have this, and that means pollution. Pollution
Yes.
has a problem for health, environment, climate change, everything. So there's something we have to look. Now, what is the solution for us? Our solution is very simple. You have to go nuclear, you have to go space-based. Thorium, you have to, we have the maximum thorium content reserves in the world. Kerala beach is full of thorium. In fact, we are the lead researcher in the thorium technology. And in fact, we have a experimental reactor going. We need to hasten the cycle. There are issues in this. I'm not saying that you do it by day after tomorrow. We need to do it. Luckily, let me tell you, India is on the right track here. Thorium. We are the leaders in the thorium cycle race. However, the next thing, it's not that thorium will give you all problems, will solve all your problems. You have to invest in hydrogen technologies and harnessing space-based energy. So that is the importance of your space program. Your space program, whether it's Chandrayaan or Mangalyaan, is not a free trip there to go there and have a look at how Mars looks like. The whole idea is to get deuterium from there and get into fusion technology. And this is what the Secretary Space has said. And we should be, like I said, are we strong enough? Like I said, as a country, we are strong enough because we are the lead almost here. Which are the countries which have this capability of going to Mars today? China, USA, India, and Russia.
Now you have a drawing here, SPS Type 3, optical concentrator with microwave power transmission. Can you expand on that a little bit? Because I'm curious
These
too.
are basic solar panels, which are huge solar panels deployed in the space, right? And with photovoltaic cells. And they beam down microwave energy onto where you want. And on ground, you have receptors, microwave receptors, which convert it into energy and send it across to people.
What is the conversion efficiency, sir?
I wouldn't like to go into it at this point of time.
Okay.
Because this is a futuristic technology. It's evolving. Right? The whole thing is evolving. In fact, if you say this itself, these mirrors, reflectors are something like about 5 to 6 kilometers in width.
Yes.
They're big. So I'll not get into the technology or the technical matters of this.
I used to work for an optics company. I know the conversion efficiency.
Yeah.
So that's why I asked you.
You tell me then.
Well, the mirror array to the photovoltaic cell The mirrors themselves are about 70 to 80% per mirror. And when you aggregate all of them, and not everybody will be in the same phase, you're going to probably look at maybe 30 to 35%. I'm worst case assumption,
Yeah, fine. That's fine. That's
right?
okay. Even if
And
you, yeah.
and the photovoltaic cells have a conversion efficiency of between 15 to 20%.
So,
Uh,
well, overall, I put it this way: if you can harness even 10% of your initial source
yeah.
and get it down and transmission loss, it's hell of a lot because you're not talking of the energy of the sun,
Yes. Yes.
right?
Yes.
It's a big pie. The challenges are there. I'm not saying this is today. It might take a decade, 2 decades, but unless we plan for it today,
Yeah. Yeah.
we will not
Please
get
go
there.
ahead, sir. Yeah.
That's the thing, right? Okay. Now we'll come to defense. Today we've entered a era of a multi-domain warfare. Earlier it used to be air, land, and sea domains, but now it is space, cyberspace, nuclear, diplomacy, economy, public opinion, all this. And war is going on. It's neither war nor peace. It's going on day and night. All kinds of actors, state, non-state, state-sponsored actors are being used. And the means you're using are hard, soft, and conventional and non-conventional power. This is the way we are fighting today between states. The great power competition is going on in the form of a multi-domain warfare. And in the last generation, we spoke of the revolution in military affairs. This generation, we are talking of disruption in military affairs. And these military affairs are disrupted. We saw it in Ladakh also. Right? We saw it in the South China Sea also. All these technologies have come into the equation. I'll not read them, but have a look at it.
Right.
These are all the disruptive technologies, all dual use technologies. We'll talk of it a little later. Now, when you look at defense, so when you're looking at the kind of warfare you're doing and the kind of disruptive technologies, defense is the next point of strategic independence. The most complex and critical sector. You need to indigenize, you need to reduce imports to be Atmanirbhar. You need to modernize. A defense industrial complex is a key to economic revival. And this has been proven not by us alone, USA,
Yeah.
right? The USA survives on its defense industrial complex for many things, not only economy, even technology. A lot of technologies have come out of the defense industrial complex. And today that's what China is also doing, right? And in the last century, it was Britain which did this. You have to ingest disruptive technologies, which I spoke of. And all this, mind you, we're going to do when there's going to be an economic squeeze for the next 5 years. It's not going to, unless we get through this imbalance, or the challenge that we're going to have a tight economy. Your economy might grow, so is your population, so is your necessities, so are your requirements. So you'll never get out of the economic squeeze till you break a barrier. I mean, you look at it, China was in this kind of a state about 20 years back. It took them 2 decades to come to a state where they passed that economic squeeze, and we're going to have that coming ahead now. And for that, you need a direct politico-military connect, which we don't have today, right? And luckily, we are heading there. We're getting there. And our bureaucratic control is outdated. I mean, it took the prime minister to say that, look, the bureaucrats can't do everything. I mean, he said this in the parliament. So that consciousness is there, and there is a shift in this, which I'm very happy about. Right? Right. Now we need to do something called civil-military fusion, or military-civil fusion, whichever you call it. And which are the areas? Artificial intelligence, new materials, energy, which we already spoken of, communication, nuclear power, space, quantum computing. And these are all dual-use technologies. Unless you can exploit them extensively for military and non-military purposes, right? China is doing it in a big way. USA did it in the last century in a big way. We will not be there. And this is something, again, we have to start thinking of. This is something we have not really started thinking very seriously, but we need to go there. Now, health. Yeah, before your point which we wanted to raise about health, tell.
Yeah, so I think India can immediately start monetizing its health potential. Medical tourism was taking off before COVID hit. However, it is my belief that even inside India, for example, adopting more Ayurvedic type methods, because there is for everything that you think of as an allopathic remedy, there's an equivalent and equally effective Ayurvedic remedy. And I can tell you, I've been using Ayurveda to take care of some of my more long pending things that allopathy doesn't seem to be able to completely address. You understand that Ayurveda has a basis of science on it, behind it, and this part needs to be brought out in a more cogent and a more coordinated way, in my opinion. And again, in this post COVID, where you're going to have a bubble to bubble, this is perfect, in fact, where you have an Ayurveda is typically like an ashram, the self-contained ashram, where people can just directly come there, fly into the airport, and then you take a travel bubble and come to that place, get there 2 weeks, 3 weeks, get done, and then leave. So this mindset, if India starts thinking about it and starts applying it aggressively, I think that would be a much faster way to start monetizing its potential, in my opinion, sir.
Yeah, there's no two ways about it. Let me put it. I totally agree with you. Look at the first bullet which I put. It's a low-hanging fruit.
Right.
It's our semantics are different, but the fundamental is the same. And like you said, we have a very strong health sector, and this health sector goes across. It's not only Ayurveda. You have homeopathy also.
Right. Right.
You have other forms of medication which are internationally recognized, right? Siddha, right? So it's not as if you're going to look at only allopathic cures. Okay. Then of course we are a pharma and medical products powerhouse. It's everyone knows. Everyone calls us the pharmacy of the world, right? Your medical services already have an international footprint. So many medical professionals of Indian origin are abroad. I'm not talking about only USA. Every country. We need to leverage them back. That's what I've written this later. Yeah, but one thing which we have to do is you have to re-establish your active pharmaceutical ingredient production, so that you cut out China completely. We lost it over the past 2 decades. We have to rebuild it over the next decade. It'll take a decade. It's not going to happen day after tomorrow. Everyone says reduce dependence on China. You have to do it in a planned manner. And in this, if you do, you will be the undisputed global leader. Look, we have all kinds of health resources. You have all the fantastic human capability, and you have a resource base, an industrial resource base, right? And but you need to start a health and medical technology mission. Just to substantiate what you're saying, right? And then we have some of the best of our people in the best of institutions abroad. Medical tourism, what you said, very important. And we have, it's not as if we don't have, we need to build it up. And one thing where we have to enter in a great way is research, production, diagnostic, and services. Expand it. This is our ace. And this will start, it's already started giving you, returns, your Covaxin and your SII, Serum Institute of India, and Covishield. It's not as if we're not there and we're going to produce more vaccines. So that's already given you a tremendous base, but you need to go further. Right.
A few years ago, I think about 30 plus years ago, when everybody was trying to see where best to put down one's roots. I had a friend who was a doctor, and he was actually trying to apply to go abroad at that point of time. But he said, the best country to practice medicine is India. Yeah. India has such a spectrum of diseases. If you really want to become good at what you are, you should practice medicine in India, especially in the hinterlands, where you really have to put the thought into it, because this is 35, 40 years ago, when you didn't have a street corner pharmacy store. You really had to think through this and find out what exactly could be the problem, and just give the simplest remedies, and so on and so forth. So he said that India was the best place to practice medicine. And I'm sure, this is something that I see also. Many of my friends who happen to be doctors in US, they take 3 4 months sometimes off in a year, and then go and practice medicine. In fact, some take turns, to make sure that one of the doctors is always in India and the others are in US. So that way there's a unbroken chain that keeps continuing. So please continue, sir.
No, I agree with you. This is not a new phenomenon. Louis Pasteur did it long back.
Hmm.
You go to Kunur, there's a Louis Pasteur Institute. He came there and did his pasteurization studies here. He was not, after all, when you talk of pasteurization and milk and penicillin and all these, a lot of things, and smallpox and all, it's here. It is
Right.
India who eradicated smallpox. I mean,
Right.
I didn't say it. The head of the WHO recently said India led the world out of smallpox and polio and all that. And he was saying that, look, he looks forward to India leading the world out of corona. So we have tremendous strengths here. We just need to leverage them. And this will take us somewhere else.
Yes.
Right? When people talk of vaccine diplomacy, they don't realize the power which health has as a strategic, tool with us.
Sir,
A bargain chip.
I mentioned this elsewhere, but if you will permit me, I want to mention this. When India flew out vaccines to Brazil, its president Bolsonaro tweeted it out with a picture of Sanjeevani,
Correct.
Hanuman
Sanjeevani
carrying.
Booty.
Yes.
Correct. Yes.
So this is the power of vaccine
Health.
diplomacy.
Yeah, I agree with you. And then, of course, digital India. Right? The Prime Minister says data is the new gold, and everyone says, but so. But when my Prime Minister tells that, I believe him, right? And I have no reason. And he talks of digital India, AI, cyber, communications, robotic, IoT, 3D printing, everything. We need to become a knowledge-based society. We need to embrace both hardware and software. We need to have a startup system, right? And we need to have investment friendly policies for growth, because the human capital is there. I mean, it's well known, any big digital technology firm anywhere in the world has a huge community of Indians, right? And they go from here, they don't go from anywhere. And I'm in IIT, I see the kind of potential we have in this. We just have to put it together and hold it for ourselves,
Yes. Yes.
right? And well, I mean, this will just catapult us somewhere else if we do the right thing, right? Right. Of course, we have some pitfalls which we need to understand, and this thing, we have a great inability to reform. Look at the farm laws, so important, so mandatory, but yet we are struggling to reform. I'll not go to who's wrong or right, but as a nation we are struggling. A lot of vested interests in India. Quality is a problem. We've had this problem for a long time. Pollution is an issue. Education. Everyone wants a white collar job. Skilling is deficient in India. If you want to get there, you have to be highly skilled. Today, you will be surprised to get good skilled people, those craftsmen, those people who can work with their hand, who had that native ability and native understanding and the native science and the native knowledge of materials is going out. That actually worries me. And this is not my opinion. This is the opinion of a lot of my compatriots in places like IIT, right? And we need a political consensus. That's something which I find going a little awry. I'm a little disappointed and I'm worried about it as an individual, not as an army man, as a senior citizen who's seen the length of breadth of this country and served this country for 40 years. I would like to see more political consensus across the board. We need a national focus. I'm not talking of nationalism and all that. We need a national focus that all of us have to work for India and nothing more than that, right? Right. With this, I'll have to say Jai Hind, and these are my contacts and all that. So I'll take the presentation off, and then we can discuss whatever you want.
Yeah. So I think you've done a great capture of the essentials that India needs to do and address. To me, a couple of things that stood out, sir, is without water you can't live. You have to live to be able to do other things,
Yes.
and so water absolutely is a number one. Number two, of course, what like you said, you need energy because when you are up and about, you need to have whatever idea that comes to your mind. You got to be able to play it out, practice it out. So you need energy. And the
Right.
third thing is you need to be healthy to be able to do these two things about one, two. So I think these are all like fundamental building blocks that will help a nation progress. And I think India is certainly moving in this direction. And at somewhere, India needs to realize that this disruptive mindset for politics, political gain, is harmful and actually hurts those people more, the ones that do practice it more than the ones that they are aiming at. I don't want to name any names, but people have to understand that this stuff is really, really not productive. India needs a lot of catching up to do. You see, in China, it had a single political system, and they could direct the entire country towards one goal, and the country moved in that direction. Whereas in India, we debate things to death, and sometimes it's not very productive to do that. And we have been doing, General Ravi Shankar, this is not the only talk where I have had experts come in and weigh in on these things. We've even talked about creating islands of excellence
Yeah,
so that it
I'm
makes
okay with it.
harder for people to come to that island to go and protest, because sometimes, god damn it, you want to get things done, you don't have time. And you can't just say, oh, buy this, buy that, and because of this, because of that, taking all these things into account, nothing will happen. So this bold decision making needs to happen. And I'm really hoping, General Ravi Shankar, a little bit of segue here, that the current elections give a path for the ruling government to at least establish a certain focus in terms of trying to pull the defense, the economy, and the technology all pulling in the same direction. You need to do that. I mean, we need to have this debate. What I think we have started today in P Gurus is perhaps something that mainstream media also needs to talk. What are our strengths? What are our weaknesses? Which are the things that we need to look at? When you start looking at this PowerPoint, it is so simple, it is so obvious. Yet, right, if you go out of this thing and go back to our real life, somehow things just get lost. And that focus, being able to know, okay, I need to get these things done first in the day before I start doing other things. These things are very important. And I'm hoping that people who watch this thing, viewers who watch this thing, try to start applying how General Ravi Shankar has gone about, one, two, three, four. You have to do these things in your daily life also, and that will help everyone. And in turn, it will also help the country to move forward. I hope I have summarized what we had as
Yeah,
discussion today, sir. If you would like to
yeah.
add something before we
I,
sign
I
off.
I'd like to, India has been fortunate. We've had in the past 2 decades, right? We've had two very good prime ministers, Mr. Manmohan Singh and Mr. Narendra Modi. I mean, each had his strengths, each had his this thing. We'll not debate, but overall, if you see, they gave the right direction to India. Where we have probably not made the cut or not been able to go the way we should have gone is what you said, the dissonance below, the fractured policy below, which doesn't allow good intentions to be converted into good actions. And this is what I want. I want nothing else from my leaders. Well, look, they can fight with each other to win a seat or not win a seat, or come into power and not go be in power. But they should be together to take the nation forward. Agree to disagree, right? And and we're not talking of great things. We're talking of simple things: water, health, electricity. You some very fundamental things. Defense. After all, everyone needs defense. So if we can focus on these few issues, right? I mean, I've taken the trouble of coming out of my comfort zone. My comfort zone is strategy, defense, and all this. I've come into a different area. Someone might say, "Why is the general talking of all this nonsense? It's not as expert system." I'm not talking as an expert. I'm talking as a simple individual who feels that India will progress. If we adopt the common things in these. This is where I leave it, and I'm open to questions otherwise, or even criticism. I have no issue.
Yes, viewers, feel free to send in your questions. We will try and have them lined up. If there are some things that look very good, perhaps we can include them in our next session, because General and I have sort of worked out this. I'm saying this on air without really checking with General, but I can see a relationship developing here where ideas strike us, and then we start bouncing things around. It starts taking shape, and then the good General spends his time putting together the presentation, and then we talk about it. And these are all sort of like your lessons. See, the one good thing about these lessons is there are no tests after that. These are life lessons, something that you can take it and apply to your own life. So hopefully that's how you look at these things. Do subscribe to our channel and do join our membership. At some point, we may have to try and look at our members and give them a little bit better attention, especially if there are 1,000 questions, and if members are about 100, and the 100 questions will definitely be taken ahead of the other 900 remaining questions. So please do think about joining our membership. It's not very expensive, but what we need to know is that we have this path, that we have these committed subject matter experts who will come and talk to us. And with that, I'd like to sign off today. General Ji, Ram Ram, thank you very much, and hope to see you again.
And Jai Hind.
Jai Hind.
Ram Ram and Jai Hind is the way we greet each other and say bye to each other in the armed forces. And this I learned in 1977. Jai Hind and Ram Ram.
Thank you very much, sir, and Ram Ram.